Welcome to our regular meeting on this November 4th. We had, let's see, so I'll call the meeting to order and we'll get right to business with item A1, a report out of closed session. So we had a meeting that started at 6:30 and it was a closed session conference with real property negotiators with no reportable action. Anything further to report out?
No.
All right, then we will move on to item A2. Roll call, please.
Director Barsanti. Unmute. There you go. Director Barsanti.
Here.
There you go. Director Corbett.
Present.
Director Couch.
Here.
Director Mayo.
Here.
President Burke.
Here. And item A3, Pledge of Allegiance. Director Mayo, will you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance tonight?
Sure.
Have a flag.
Would everyone please join me? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Are there any additions to the agenda?
There are not.
I'll move we approve the agenda.
Second?
I'll second.
And roll call?
Director Barsanti.
Yes.
Director Corbett.
Yes.
Director Couch.
Yes.
Director Mayo.
Yes.
President Burke.
Yes, and that was item A5, approval of the agenda. Item B, public hearings. There are no public hearings scheduled for tonight. And item C, public comment and written communications. Do we have any written communications?
We do not.
And is there anyone wishing to give public comment tonight? Oh, let's see. I have a script to read. If you do wish to give public comment, the public input will be open for all items as well as right now during public comment for items not on the agenda. If you would like to speak during these times, please raise your hand. You'll find this raise your hand feature at the bottom of your screen. If you're on the phone, you will need to dial *9 to raise your hand, and our tech support will notify if I miss it, if your hand is raised and I miss it, and you will be called upon. Once called upon, you will be asked to unmute. You will not be able to unmute yourself until you've been called upon to speak. And on the phone, you'll get an automated press *6 to unmute. So any person may address the board at this time upon any subject not identified on this agenda, but within the jurisdiction of McKinleyville Community Services District. However, any matter that requires action will be referred to staff for a report of action at a subsequent committee or board meeting. As to matters on the agenda, an opportunity will be given to address the board when the matter is considered. Comments are limited to 3 minutes and letters should be used for complex items. And with that, is there anyone who wishes to give public comment at this time? Well, I do see that we have a couple of members of the public who have fared well in the elections for MCSD. So I would like to just say thank you to everyone who submitted their names as candidates to serve MCSD, and congratulations to those who will be seated in as district directors. I look forward to seeing you in that role, and I'll just hold for a minute here, see if anyone would like to give public comment, and then we'll move on. Well, all right, we are going to move on to item D, consent calendar. Consent calendar items are expected to be routine and non-controversial, to be acted upon by the board of directors at one time without discussion. If any board member, staff member, or interested person requests that an item be removed from the consent calendar, it shall be removed so that it may be acted upon separately. Are there any consent calendar items that anyone would like to remove? Director Corbett, I do see your hand.
Yeah, someone muted me just seconds ago. Maybe they saw my hand. I'd like to pull items D4 and D8. It just involves asking some informational questions on both of them.
Great. Anyone else on the board or staff wish to pull any items? Anyone from the public wish to pull consent calendar item? Okay, then I will entertain, so we are going to pull item D4 and D8, but I will entertain a motion for the remaining consent calendar items.
Also move.
And I'm looking for a second. I see Dave's mouth, Director Couch.
Read my lips.
There, now I can say.
Great. Okay, we have a motion and a second. Do I need to go to public comment? Are there anyone wishing?
Yes, they may want to pull it. They may want to pull it.
Right. Okay. So I have a motion and a second, so we will move to a roll call.
So before roll call, I just want to let you know that if you are muted and you hit spacebar and you hold the spacebar down, that will temporarily unmute you. And then when you let it up, so use your spacebar as just a little trick. So Director Barsanti,
Yes.
Director Corbett,
Yes.
Director Couch,
Yes.
Director Mayo,
Yes.
and President Burke.
Yes. So we will take item D4 next, and that is on page 35 or handy tab number 4. Thank you to staff for giving us a tabulated board packet. Super great improvement. And this is presented by our general manager, Pat Kaspari.
I may be able to short circuit a full reading of it. I only have a question.
Okay, please.
And the question is that there's only a 1-year waiver of liability for the installation of a pipe. And it just seems to me that's a very short period of time. And it may be standard, or there may be things I haven't considered. I don't want to hold this item up, but I'd like management to think through whether we ought to require a longer period of time. And maybe they have an answer to the question.
And to respond to that, so 1 year is our standard for subdivision pipes, and typically this is to cover any minor leaks, etc., manufactured pipe defects, a fitting that isn't working well, and those generally will show up within a year. You're right, the overall pipe should last 50 years, but this is to pick up those minor things, not to guarantee that the pipe is going to last forever.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comment on item D8? Oh, go ahead.
Oh, on D8, I had a question.
Oh,
And that is water rating was 61 out of 100. And that just seemed low to me. And so is what's normal? And if it is low, what's causing it? Because I think we're a pretty well-run district, so.
And procedurally, I skipped over a vote there on D4. Are we supposed to take them one at a time?
Oh, okay, then
Yes,
I'm
that's
sorry.
correct.
Okay, so staying with item D4, does the public anyone in the public wish to comment on this item? Seeing no hands, then I'll bring it back for a motion in a second.
I'll move D4 with the clarifications received from staff.
I'll second it.
Thank you. And roll call.
Sorry about that. I was writing things down. Director Corbett. I'm sorry, Director
Aye.
Barsanti first.
Yes.
Director Corbett.
Aye, second time around. I hope it's
Director
good.
Couch.
Yes.
Director Mayo.
Yes.
And President Burke.
Yes.
I wish you guys were in order on my screen, but unfortunately you're not.
All right, now moving to item D8, and this will be presented by James Henry, our Operations Director. Hello, James.
Hello, how are you doing?
All right.
So I will try to explain this the best that I can. It's a very confusing document, but try to look at it as 61 is the new 100. What it is the 61 is a really good score. We were 57 last year, I think 54 before that. So we're climbing up, and I'll tell you where that comes from. If you're looking at the document, there's a little white box with the little numbers and a little red triangle, or you don't see the triangle, but the little white box with a 3, 5, 8, 10. Are you seeing those little on page 50?
Yes, I'm seeing that. It's
Okay, that's where that total, that 61 comes from, the total in those white boxes. So in order to get, where you can see like we have a 5 and we have a 8 and a 10, there's behind those that you don't get to see because it's on the spreadsheet are explanations 1 through 10. And if you have to meet the criteria and then you rate yourself honestly on that criteria, like, yes, I don't deserve any more than this because of that. So for example, the lowest 3 under pressure, in order to get anything higher than a 3, like, so the next step would be a 4. McKinleyville has pressure reducing stations, and we cut down the pressure on low areas so that we're not feeding, for instance, down in Director Corbett, Burke, in your neighborhood, you guys would have 120 pressure if we didn't cut it down at the freeway. And
I knew it.
But so we minimize that pressure at the freeway with pressure reducing valves. To get a 4 on that one item, those pressure reducing valves have to be tied into the SCADA electronically. So we're stopped at 3 and we can't go higher than 3 unless we go wire in and tie them into SCADA so we can watch it from SCADA. So that's how they rate it. So if you want to nobody gets high scores, and 61, really try to look at 61 being a really good number. There's just a criteria you have to meet. You have to have meters tested all your meters tested every year on the meter testing side. So you have to answer honestly, and it gets validated. You get questioned on all your answers. I've argued for some of them to be, a 10 that are 10s. Those are doing great on, but that's how that number comes to be. So it's not a performance thing. It's more of what do you have, and electronically, are you tied in? It's through SCADA, through all these and all that. Like, it's what you have. It's not how you're performing. That makes sense.
Sure. It's great to get that clarification. As I said to Pat earlier, I'm used to us being in the 90th percentile. So yeah, that stood out to me.
And for myself, I tried the 61 argument was really good in elementary school, but the teacher didn't agree.
Well, I'm hoping I tried to get before the meeting. I did try to get an average of everybody else's in our district because Chris from Humboldt Bay does do the auditing. She audits all of them. And so I was trying to get an overall average, like what's everybody else have? And if I were to have that number, which I don't, I think you would see that 61 is a very good performing number.
All right.
Great. Any further questions from the board? Would anyone from the public like to make comment on this item? All right, then I will, oh, it's an informational item. Okay, great. We don't even need a vote on it. So is that fine then? We leave item D8. It was informational. We can move on. Okay. So we are moving into continued and new business, and we're starting with item E1 on page 51, or tab number 1 of the second set of tabs. And this is an approval for a grant application presented by Leslie Frisbee, our Recreation Director. Leslie.
Hi. Okay. The North Coast Resource Partnership released a grant opportunity earlier in October for funding up to $15,000 in technical assistance for projects that align with the goals of their organization. The application deadline was October 15th. Staff identified that the goals of the North Coast Resource Partnership aligned completely with the district's and the community's goals in the development of a community forest, and staff submitted a grant request for $15,000 to receive technical assistance for the development of a comprehensive community forest management plan. Staff took this action proactively preparing for the potential acquisition of the 556 acres of forest land from the Trust for Public Lands, should the grant from the California Natural Resource Agency for the purchase of the property from Green Diamond Resource Company be awarded. The grant application and the goals and criteria can be reviewed in attachment 1. Staff recommends that the board review the information provided, discuss, take public comment, and vote to approve the submittal of the North Coast Resource Partnership grant application.
Thank you. And we could hardly be better aligned with the opportunity. I want to turn to the board and see if there's any questions or comments. Director Corbett.
Yes, first of all, I think this is a great organization to be aligned with, and they're one of the more successful ones in the multi-county area, and that has assured us getting high levels of grants funded. I did want to say, the person who wrote this is not used to the trees and forestry of a redwood forest, and so when they're talking about concerns on the ratio of what I assume are Doug fir and oak trees, we're not in danger of wiping out the oak trees on this one. So I do think it might pay to just go or other appropriate vegetation, something like that. I don't want to mess up the contract in any way, shape, or form. But if you read this, it's really good for someplace down south. It's really good for inland, but it's not really very, the species of concern, the conflicts are there, the work needs to be done. It's a great organization, but I'm not too worried about the oaks, but I do think appropriate other vegetation. And I could go into it more, but I don't think there's much point to that. But. So Leslie, can you just call him on the phone, tell him?
I'm not sure about that. I'm not sure which specific section of the application that you are referring.
Okay. Can you give me one moment? I had it and then
I will say a lot, all the narrative pieces were the data we used for the application a lot of it came from the work that the Trust for Public Lands did for the application that they submitted to the Natural Resource Agency.
Well, I'll go out there. I do not see a lot of oak trees. I mean, in Trinity County, I know the boundary between Doug fir and oak, and the overplanting of the oak with Doug fir is a serious problem. And in ours, it would be more Sitka spruce. It would be conflicts between the conifers of Sitka
Mhm.
spruce, your grand fir, your fir, and redwood.
And you're, all-
Let
and
me
you're
let
all-
me just try and find it. I don't want to take too much time, but I do think we
and-
need to.
and
I
anywhere
noticed-
it's wet, the alder kind of encroaches.
Right. I mean, it's a little bit drier territory than we are.
I think it's the bottom of page 61, Director Corbett.
Yeah, I will say that first bullet, that was pulled straight out of TLP's project proposal for the acreage that they submitted the application for.
Well, that's fine, but at some point we don't want to drive off the cliff. We just want to refocus people. And I don't think it's a problem. They want to do the right job. The issue's the right issue. I'm just saying throw in other vegetation. And
Well-
that,
Can I ask you a question, John?
yeah,
So perhaps this language is necessary for some other criterias that I may not know in the whole scope of this type of a granting system. Are you saying leave the language that's there, but just also add other vegetation?
yes.
Okay, yeah, I don't see, well, I don't see a problem with it, but it wouldn't matter whether I see a problem with it or not, because I don't know what criteria we have to really.
The other key piece here is that we submitted this on October 15th. So it's been submitted, but I don't think, I'm guessing that was, we might have a few oaks up there and it was just thrown in.
A tan oak or two.
Yeah,
So if it's submitted, John, if it's submitted, we
Well, if
probably
it's a-
oughtn't,
all
we
I'm
probably
saying
oughtn't
is-
mess with
is
it.
that when we get down to the brass tacks of the analysis, it ought to be broader than oaks. That's all, other vegetation.
I think,
Great.
I think,
And
John,
I think they'll do it. I just wanted to comment on it because
Yeah.
it's a form contract, didn't appear as good as it might have been. If we already signed off on mea culpa to the district. Sorry, David.
I think the bottom of page 53, there's a colored chart. And what you're talking about is in the tan section of that.
Yes.
Oh, okay. The categories grassland, meadow, and oak woodland restoration, reduction of competing vegetation to sustain natural meadows, pastures, grasslands, and oak woodlands. And that's very, very common throughout the state. We're probably one of the areas that's least common. That's all. So
Yeah.
if we already submitted, we need to probably shut up, move forward. And then, but when we get down to implementation, Leslie, just make sure it gets guided to be other vegetation as well. I'm sure
Yeah.
they'll do it. They're a great organization.
I'm sure there will be very smart people helping us with that, people who know all of the things that I don't know.
Okay, but I can tell you it's a little narrow.
Okay.
So this is a grant for 15,000, no cost share, I assume from the district is required.
Correct.
And we submitted the application and this is the board's first look and we're looking for a motion to approve. Well, let me first, so any more comments from the board and then I'll go to the public and then come back and look for a motion from y'all. Okay, moving to public comment. If you wish to make comment, please raise your hand. The digital hand is at the bottom of your screen. Seeing none. I'll bring it back to the board and entertain a motion.
I'll move we approve. Although I must say this is the first grant for the community forest that we haven't gotten approval for. So we're definitely having a aggressive stance by staff. And so I appreciate being on it before it even exists.
I'll second the motion.
All right, any further discussion? Okay, then a roll call vote, please.
Director Barsanti,
Yes.
Director Corbett,
Yes.
Director Couch,
Yes,
Director Mayo,
Yes,
President Burke.
Yes. Thank you very much. We're going to move on to, thank you, Leslie Frisbee. We're going to move on to item E2, page 65. This is a submittal to another grant application being presented by our general manager, Pat Kaspari.
Thank you, President Burke. Yeah, this is a very actually interesting grant application. This is the first time that Cal OES, California Office of Emergency Services, has opened up a grant program just for special districts. So this is the first year of this program, and I think it's the first time I've seen a grant program geared towards just special districts. And this is for a resiliency grant to deal with the power outages that have been going around the state. So we heard about this grant the first part of October. It was due on October 30th. So James Henry, your operations director, did a great job of jumping on this grant as well. We had budgeted $50,000 this year to replace one of our portable generators. Those are the generators that we take around to either the water pump stations or the wastewater lift stations that don't have fixed permanent generators. And we can plug these in to operate those during power outages. So we had $50,000 already budgeted to replace our aging portable generator, and we decided to go after free money on. So again, these are there's no matching funds required. It's 100% grant. And James got new cost estimates for a new portable emergency generator, came in at $76,000. So we completed the grant application, had President Burke review and sign off on it, and we submitted it on October 30th. So staff recommends that the board review the information provided, take public comment, and approve of the submittal of the Cal OES Power Resiliency Allocation to Special Districts Program Grant application. So again, this one has been submitted because it was due on the 30th.
With this one though, like our general manager said, I did get to sign the actual application. And with that, any questions or comment from the board?
it's great. Good job.
And looking to the public, is there any public comment on this item? See none. This is an item to vote on, and so I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion. I submit we approve the submittal of the Cal OES Power Resiliency Allocation to Special Districts Program Grant application.
Second.
Thank you. Oh, sorry, did I hear a second?
Yes, second.
Oh, okay. Director Corbett, you got that, April? Yep.
Yes, I did.
Okay. And so on to a roll call vote, please.
Director Barsanti,
Yes.
Director Corbett,
Yes.
Director Couch,
Yes,
Director Mayo,
yes.
and President Burke.
Yes, thank you. You know, I'm curious, do we ever have communication with other CSDs when something like this comes up? I mean, this is really great to have a CSD targeted grant program. Curious.
Yeah, I actually sent this around to all my contacts with the other CSDs to make sure they were going after it. Kind of California Special Service District also sent emails around making sure that we were going after it and that everybody else was going after it. Yeah.
And I also spoke with vendors and to have them reach out to their customers too.
Great. Yes, Director Mayo.
And we're going to be seeing more of this type of stuff because we're going to soon have the state revolving fund should have that 5% of the WRDA water money that's designated specifically for special districts. So we're hoping that that comes online soon, and that's going to be a real good source.
Yeah, great. That'll come on as a granting mechanism.
No. Well, you know what? It's how we get money from the state revolving fund right now. It's going to be that similar process.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's sometimes a competitive grant, and sometimes it's more per capita. Just it kind of depends on the structure. Pat, is there any other forms of that? Do you know that I don't know?
No, I think you're as up to speed on that stuff as anyone.
Okay. Hey, just a comment, guys.
Yeah, thank you. And rolling right along here, we finished that one, right? We got a roll call and everything. We are moving on to item E3. And it is another funding opportunity on page 67. And again, to our general manager, Pat Caspari.
Yep, this is another grant application, and this is for the considered approval of the submittal of hazard mitigation grants notice of interests and we're considering 4 separate projects. 1, the Mad River Waterline Crossing. 2, forest and forest fire management plans and implementation for the community forest, Hewitt Preserve, and Hiller Park areas. 3, the replacement of the McCluskey Redwood tanks, and 4, the replacement of fire hydrants and improvements throughout the district. So again, this is a Cal OES grant, and this is the same grant program that the district got money for their 4.5 million gallon tank replacement, as well as the sewer replacement of the sewer line crossings of Highway 101. And so the way this grant program works, it's 3 separate phases in the grant application. 1 is the one for these ones. It's the notice of interests, where you can submit, and they're fairly straightforward, just general project descriptions, contact information. You submit those to Cal OES. Cal OES reviews them and then says either yes or no, yeah, this is a grant eligible project. And then they'll send you a letter back saying, yes, that project qualifies for this program. Go ahead and please submit a full-blown grant application. Those full-blown grant applications are quite a bit of work. You have to do detailed cost-benefit analysis and detailed NEPA and EPA environmental analysis. It typically takes about $20,000 to generate a full-blown grant application. But then you submit those, and then Cal OES will come back and say, okay, yes, we're going to fund this grant application. So it's kind of a 3-phase process there, and we're at the very first phase. This one is for the wildfires from this past summer. So again, this program is set up for whenever there's a federally declared disaster in the state of California, they set aside a pot of funds for hazard mitigation grants. So they are given preferences to the counties where the disaster was declared. They are also giving preference for wildfire mitigation type projects. But any project that qualifies for the hazard mitigation program anywhere in the state of California can apply. The first project we would like to submit an NOI on is the replacement of the water main that comes from Humboldt Bay to our Ramey pump station and goes under the Mad River. We submitted a grant application, a Cal OES hazard mitigation grant application for that project last year, and it didn't get funded. But we'd like to resubmit this year. So that's the first one. The second one, since they are focusing on forest fire and wildfire mitigation projects, again, we thought we would bundle in the not yet known community forest to try to get a forest management plan out of this grant application, as well as implement forest management practices for the community forest, but also include our Hewitt Ranch areas, as well as the areas around Hiller Park. As the board may or may not know, we've had 2 of our dead trees set on fire. One caught on fire and burned completely, and the other one, the Arcadia fire got in and put it out very quickly. But we would like to, we don't have money to go in and take down those old dead trees, so we'd like to get money from this grant program to thin those out. The fourth one too is more of a wildfire mitigation, and the district every year puts aside money to replace fire hydrants or to retrofit fire hydrants, to have pumper adapters put on them. And this is something that the district worked on with Arcata Fire to come up with a plan for improving fire hydrants throughout the district that aren't up to the current standard, as well as installing some new fire hydrants, particularly in the Central Avenue area. Every year, the district sets aside funding. Arcata Fire is supposed to match that funding. Every year, Arcata Fire doesn't come up with the match, so the work doesn't get done. So we've wrapped all of the replacement into one grant application. And then the last one is for the replacement of the McCluskey Redwood tanks. Those are the 2 1,500-gallon Redwood tanks that sit up above the Cochrane tanks and feed that area up there. They're 50-year-old tanks. They're still in fairly decent shape, but they're 50-year-old tanks. And we would like to replace them likely with 2 200,000-gallon bolted steel tanks. So staff recommends that the board review the information provided, take public comment, and consider approval of the submittal of notice of interest for the hazard mitigation grants for the 4 listed projects.
Director Mayo.
Yeah, subject to public comment and further discussions from the board, I'd like to move this item forward, and then I have a question.
Okay,
Second.
great. Go ahead with your question.
Pat, how many trees are you talking about in that dead and dying tree deal?
You know, I don't have a handle on how many up in the hopefully future community forest. Around Hiller, and maybe James can chime in here too, but there's probably, 10 at least down in the Hiller Park area. And I would say there's probably 10 to 20 in the Hewitt Ranch area that we'd like to take out.
And what is our plan of disposing of the byproduct?
I have no plan.
I wanted to mention that the sheriff's wood project is looking for wood all the time. They might even be able to assist a bit, but if not, it would probably be maybe helpful in the grant to say that we're doing this, but it would also just be good for the community if we could donate that to the sheriff's wood project.
Yeah, very good recommendation.
What's the Sheriff's Wood project?
Well, you get a drunk driving or smoking a joint where you shouldn't be ticket, and instead of setting it out in the county hoos cow, you get to go chop firewood at a lot behind the old General Hospital, or was it General?
Yeah.
Yeah. And they chop up firewood and then they parse it out to seniors for a real reasonable price. It's been going
Excellent.
on for years. It's a really good program.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks. Thanks for sharing. All right. So any other board comment, questions? And for clarity, so we have 4 projects listed here. Let's say they like all 4 of them. What's our action at that point?
Then I likely would come back to the board. I don't think I would want to submit all 4 full-blown applications. So I'd probably come back to the board and ask your opinion on which ones we should submit. I'd like to resubmit the Mad River Crossing because we've already done that full-blown application, so it won't be much effort to turn that one in again. But the other 3, I think we would have to narrow down to 1 or 2.
Yes, Director Mayo?
Yeah, could I have the board's permission to talk to the SWAP lieutenant about the tree thing and maybe find out some information, Pat, that would probably, that might get that done without having to put that on the grant deal?
Okay, we can consider that. Board, let's see.
I mean, I have no idea what they'll say, but I'd be happy to talk to them about it and find out some info if you'd like.
Would that be just a board chair, board president authorization?
I believe it would be, yeah. Just
Well-
if for information, you can seek for information, but whatever.
Yeah.
Well, I have the rest of the board's opinion on that. I don't know.
Yeah, I see Director Corbett.
I just want to make sure that it's acceptable to the general manager. I assume it is, but I just want to make sure.
It's absolutely acceptable to me.
Okay.
Great. Well, yes, and pending any public comment, that would cause me to think differently. I think that'd be great if you would talk to the sheriff and the SWAP
Yeah.
project.
Yeah.
All right, so turning to the public, is there any public comment on this item? All right, seeing none, then we'll bring it back for a roll call vote.
Director Barsanti,
Yes.
Director Corbett,
Yes.
Director Couch,
Yes.
Director Mayo,
Yes.
President Burke.
Yes, thank you. Now we're on to page 71. This is the Debt Management and Capital Financing Policy Manual being presented by the Audit Committee and has to do with most of our agenda items to this point. So I'll turn to the Audit Committee to get a report. Who would like to lead? That's Director Barsanti and Director Corbett.
Well, I guess I will. We didn't really talk about it, but that's fine. So the audit committee, it's been really nice this evening because you all have presented the grants and we really know what's going on. I think it will be beneficial for the new board coming in to know about all the grants and approve all the grants. And that's essentially what this is about. And it's just, you can read the policy change. There's quite a bit of information. Did everybody get a chance to read it? Do we need to go through it or?
It's be quite a bit if we were to read it verbatim, right? So maybe, do you want us to sum up the intent here and then we can turn it over?
That's a good idea. Let's see, the intent is so that the board is aware and approves all of the grants that the district is responsible for, and that the board is also aware and approves of all the nonprofit or other agency grants that they get on behalf of the district. so we are fully aware of what we're responsible for. And I really want to thank Colleen. She did an excellent job in the treasurer's report, making a beautiful little schedule. And it's real nice because it's, it's real clear and easy to read. Really appreciate that. And I think that's going to be a big help to, to the directors coming up, so that they know, because then you know what projects we're doing and all that. And I know it's a little bit of a hassle for our general manager. He's been so kind. We've been back and forth about this for this last month, and he's been so kind. Really appreciate his work on this, because this is an internal control, and an internal control is something that requires people to do extra effort, and it makes it a little bit more difficult. And so I totally understand that. But I think this would be a very good, the audit committee thinks this would be a very good addition. And it's kind of what everybody's been doing this evening. Really appreciate it.
Thanks. Any more to add, Director Corbett?
Not really. I'm in support of it. There was some concern by the general manager of tying his hands at getting board approval. But I tried to think through examples where that would truly not be possible. And it seemed to me they were very unlikely. And then it's sort of a basic, board signs off on it. So I think it's a good provision, and we need to be aware, though, that we did constrain the general manager some, and there could be a set of circumstances that could endanger a grant, although I don't believe there's been one for a long time.
So any questions from Director Mayo or Couch? No, and I don't see Director Couch. But I wanted to be sure, the public knows, it's not like the district didn't do a lot of this in practice, but it's always great to have a formal policy, right? But there's a lot of the actions that are now outlined specifically are taking practice and putting it into policy. So that's really a great practice. And then I just wanted to open the topic about, let's see, on page 78 of our packet, in highlighting, that paragraph talks about when grant opportunities have short turnaround times. And if staff becomes aware of a grant and the grant due date, they can't bring it to a board beforehand, right? In such cases, the general manager determines the time's too short for board approval. It says the board president shall sign and general manager shall submit the grant application. So, a couple of considerations here. So we just saw a few examples of how this policy would come into play. And I think one thing to take into account is that our general manager does have an authorization to approve purchases of up to $50,000 at his discretion. And stop me if I'm wrong at all with any of this. But in my experience with grants and approving them, so first there's the application, and then there's actually the approval, where the district would actually either agree to and sign for funding, or allow a nonprofit per se to sign for funding. And so I just want to acknowledge that there's another point in time when the grant would be coming back to the board. And I want to talk about the item that if the general manager were not able to, for some reason, get to the board president, that there's another route that the general manager could take to go ahead and submit. What's the board's thoughts on that item?
I really think it's important that the board president sign off as an internal control, because it not only protects the district, it protects our general manager too, that he's working on getting a grant too, and that other folks are aware of. An internal control like this is sort of a protection for him, that he, that he has kind of permission from the board, in essence, because the board president is aware of it.
And I want to stress a little bit, this is an exception to allow an expedited process. So for example, the community forest would not meet coming to the board, but it would have met this. I also want to go that when you say general manager, obviously, I mean, the board president obviously be the acting board president if the board president's out of town. So that would be the vice chair. So I think there are some protections in here. And then, ultimately, I can't quite envision the circumstances where we have 48 hours to get a grant and we never heard of it. Usually we have short notice, but enough notice to get together a grant application. And that should be enough time for this. And like I said, I think we can go to acting board chair. And lastly, if the general manager had something in our strategic plan, let's say, and for some reason exceptionally short, he can always go, I realize this isn't a desirable situation, but if you got a reasonable board, he can always go forward and say that forgiveness is much better than losing the grant. And my guess is the board, if he could show that he couldn't get hold of board members, that would be well received by the board. And I also want to go, even when board members are off on a trip, I have found staff has really been pretty effective at tracking us down and getting our comments. And so it's hard to envision a circumstance unless both the board chair and the vice chair both ran off to wilderness areas for a week or something, where it would ever come up. So, and then you got the basic that how do we keep a basic board function intact when we've liberalized it in order to maximize getting grants? That's what we're trying to do, is how do we get the right balance here? And it's tough. I'm not saying it's easy, but I had I have about 4 drafts on this, but at some point it just comes down to, does the board think it needs to be notified on grant applications? And I come down on the side that it should be. And somehow you have to have a mechanism to enforce it. And this was the clearest, best way. So that's where we are.
Great. Any other board comment? And I'll turn to the, oh, I see who put their hand up here, a panelist. Oh, it's our general manager. Go ahead, Pat.
Oh, great.
Thanks. Yeah, I think, whoops, I was lowering hand. So I think absolutely Director Corbett's correct. I think we had a good cross-section of how grant applications typically come to us. The very first one that Leslie presented, we found out about that, I think, on October 3rd, and it had to be submitted by October 15th. So that really was a scramble. And, a lot more grantee agencies are doing things like that. They don't want to get hundreds, thousands of grant applications that they have to review. So they are looking for, basically shovel-ready projects. So they open up a window for grant submittal that's very short. So those people who, have shovel-ready projects can turn them around quickly and get them in. The middle one, we had pretty much all of October to submit it. So it really was, James had plenty of time to put together the grant application. And then it was not difficult to get a hold of you, Mary, and have you review it and sign off on it. And then the third one, that's not due till the end of November. So we have plenty of time to bring that completely to the board. So I do agree with Director Corbett with the age of cell phone. It likely is possible to get a hold of the board president to get their approval on a short turnaround grant. I do think that there will be times when we're scrambling to just write the grant, let alone trying to track people down and get their approval, that we very well may miss a grant. However, I just heard Director Corbett said it's also okay for me to ask for forgiveness. So there might be times when we aren't exactly following the policy and come back and ask for forgiveness. But I appreciate the entire board considering that and those short turnarounds and the possibility that we might not be able to go after all those short turnaround grants.
And I think part of this is because we are more aggressive on going after grants, and it's more and more common that, and the board's tried to support that very liberally, I might add. At the same time, how do we maintain a minimum level of control? So that's what Shell and I came up with.
Okay, then turning to our members of the public, would anyone like to speak on this item? And then bringing it back to the board. So this is a roll call vote. I'll entertain a motion.
Can we make our own motion when we propose it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let's see. I would like to propose we revise the debt cap management and capital financing manual, which added section 7 grant procurement and approval policy statement.
Second.
Okay, then we can go to roll call.
Director Barsanti,
Yes.
Director Corbett,
Yes.
Director Couch,
Yes.
Director Mayo, you muted yourself. You're good.
Yes.
And President Burke.
Yes. And again, a lot of thanks to our audit committee and staff for putting this together. Like I said, it's great to have the clarity, and Director Barsanti, you helped put that table together that helped guide our finance director. It's a really great addition. Thanks a lot. Moving on to item E5, page 81, and we have a resolution for changes, or let's see, reviewing and approving the amendments related to governance, ethics, and board conduct, policy and procedures. And we get to hear from April Sousa, our board secretary.
Yeah, so for the last few years, MCSD has been accredited under the Special District Leadership Foundation. And so as a part of that, we've done the District of Distinction as well as the Transparency Certificate. So as part of that, we have to continually review our policies and submit that we have done that within a 2-year period. So the board policy and procedures manual, it really focuses on the governance, ethics, and the board conduct. And so this actually review started earlier this year under former General Manager Orsini. And then we started going through COVID, and we had the Zoom and virtual meeting requirements. And we brought that information back to the board recently at the September 9th meeting. And we also brought some information, or talked to the board at the August meeting about changes to the board self-evaluation process. So that stuff has been inserted into this policy manual, as well as some very basic changes, some trying to get some consistency with titles. And there was also additionally AB 1661 was not in the manual, and it needed to be in the manual because it is a state requirement. So all of those things have been added and changed. And so that is a part of the redlined version that is attachment 2, I believe it is. So staff recommends that the board review the draft update of the board policy manual, ask questions, take public comment, and adopt resolution 2020-23 to approve with amendments the MCSD Board of Directors policy manual related to policies and procedures on governance, ethics, and board conduct.
Thank you. Any comments from board members? Director Corbett?
Yes, this is to staff, and I can do this by motion if you feel uncomfortable with it. But in reading it, we had anti-discrimination provisions, and we had also restrictions on sexual harassment, but not for everything. And I think if we just had a general section at the very front that just that basically copies the language that's already in the document against sexual harassment, which is in the personnel sections, and the no discrimination provisions, and get it in the whole document. Otherwise, it sort of looks like the board is being skimpy on that, and I don't feel real comfortable with that. So I don't know whether you're willing to do that. If not, I'll try by motion, but
Yeah, no, I can totally do that.
okay.
On in.
Would that move under general rules
Yeah,
or, yeah?
I mean, you get in problems whenever you cite something and then you don't cite it somewhere else. You always, you've opened it up for the lawyers, and I just think it looks bad that it looks like the board's avoiding those provisions, and we're really embracing them for everybody.
Thank you. Other comments? I really appreciate this document for what it lays out here, and for future board members, we do have, we have been a district of distinction for quite some time. I'm not looking at that language, but I remember going through the training myself, and it's nice to stand here as a district of distinction. I had one small edit, and I really appreciate seeing that the staff has gone through and done even small edits. So on page 105, under the area fund, I also want to call out that Appendix A, which the committee assignments are described in, is a really nice section to give an understanding of what the board's role is with each of these committees. And it's just, when I served with the area fund, I was a non-voting member. So I thought non-voting could fit in there. Is that right for you too, Director Barsanti? You didn't vote on the, you just participated in the discussions around the area fund, is that right?
No, I actually got to vote.
Oh, okay. I didn't get invited to vote, so.
Yeah, I got, well, it's all on, it is all through email. We never met or to discuss or anything. So there's just some selections and we chose from that.
Okay, well, maybe I am mistaken. Maybe it is okay to be voting member. So no need to edit. And then I also wanted to say, I really appreciate attachment B at the end here, page 122 and 123, that staff was able to take the really static self-evaluation and turn it into more of an opportunity to engage and to get the board to engage in these questions. So big thank you. Well, I won't be answering those questions. I think it's a vast improvement on what was asked previously. So this is much more engaging, which is really great. So. All right, so turning to the public, any comment on this item? Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board. Any more comments, questions, or entertain a motion to approve?
Madam Chair, I'll move we approve with the amended staff version. And I did want to say, for some reason, this board meeting, I haven't been nearly complimentary to staff on preparing a lot of the documents as much as I should. And I'll try and be more appreciative for the rest of the meeting. But I want to say we really depend on your great work. And it's really easy up here to pick out over here or over there, but the big pictures, you're doing a great job.
Absolutely. Did I get a
There's no
motion?
second yet. There's a motion, but no second
Okay.
yet.
Looking for a second.
Director Couch, you're trying to second? You are muted.
Now I can second.
All right.
One motion, one mute. And 1 second.
Okay, roll call, please.
Director Barsanti,
Yes.
Director Corbett,
Yes,
Director Couch,
Yes.
Director Mayo,
Yes,
and President Burke.
Yes. We are moving on then to item E6. And this is our general manager's 6 months performance evaluation. Can you believe it's 6 months already? I think it feels like years. So this is presented by April Sousa. Our board
counted
secretary-
in meetings, it's about 100 years, but 6 months on the job.
Nobody expected 2020 to go like 50 years. So, you know. Again, like what we did back a few months ago, this is for the 6 month, to initiate the 6 month review process. So at this particular time, the board president will select one board member to consolidate all 5 board member evaluations. Once a member of the board has been selected, a schedule should be established. So in bold on your agenda report are some suggested dates. These are the dates so that I will be able to make sure that the board has the information in time for the closed session at the December 2nd meeting. So to complete and return the sealed evaluations would be November 13th. For the appointed consolidator to retrieve the evaluations would be November 16th. And then all the information back to myself for confidential distribution would be November 23rd. And then this would happen as a closed session on December 2nd. So I have already provided all of the members of the board with a blank evaluation and an envelope to please seal and return. It was with your packets. Also was the 3-month evaluation for reference. So if you would like an electronic version, please email me. I will get you an electronic version that you can complete as well. To finish, all of this will be done at a properly noticed board meeting with the convenience of a closed session to review the consolidated evaluations. So staff recommends that the board discuss, take public comment, and ask the board president to select one board member to consolidate all board member evaluations and set a schedule.
Thank you very much. And any question or comment from board members? And turning to the public, any questions or comments? Public comment on this item? Okay. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board, and I'll see if anyone wants to do this consolidation. But I will also acknowledge that I've done a very good job in my president role of tasking other board members with special committees and whatnot. And Director Barsanti, you did the last consolidation. Director Couch did the previous one. So I'll appoint myself to do this one. So, and the timeline looks great. And so if there is any comment from any of the directors, I'll hear that now. Otherwise, that'll be my, yes, Director Corbett.
Yeah, just be careful. That Mary Burke's a real taskmaster.
Yep. I can't get away from it, in fact. Anyone else comment? All right. Then, and April, I would like a digital version, please.
Okay. Would you like a digital version to be able to do the consolidations on? Okay.
That'd be great. You would scan them and send them.
Yeah,
to me?
and I will I'll see if I can make it into a PDF form, and that'll be easier for you.
Okay. I do have all those PDF special tools myself, though, if
Okay.
yeah. Okay, moving on to item E7. This is on page 133, and we are hear from Leslie Frisbee, our recreation director, about changing the name of the rack. Welcome back, Leslie.
Hi. Okay. So some months ago, President Burke approached staff, I guess it was August, to discuss the possibility of renaming the Recreation Advisory Committee in order to communicate to the public that the committee's full scope of responsibilities extends beyond recreation, as it also includes parks and open space management. Staff brought the discussion to the Recreation Advisory Committee to determine a recommendation to the board. The issue was discussed at the August, September, and October meetings. We did not have a quorum for a couple of those meetings, and so a decision could not be made until October. After much discussion, the Recreation Advisory Committee approved a recommendation to rename the committee as follows: Park and Recreation Committee, or PARC for short. Resolution 2020-24 in attachment 1 outlines the name change to Rule 40 of the MCSD rules and regulations. Staff and the committee members are now reviewing the committee description in the MCSD rules and regulations to ensure that the description accurately represents the committee's advisory scope and responsibility to include open spaces and natural resources as well. Any changes to this description in the rules and regulations will be brought to the board for approval in December. Staff recommends that the board review the information provided, discuss, take public comment, and vote to approve resolution 2020-24, renaming the Recreation Advisory Committee to the Park and Recreation Committee.
Thank you. Any board questions or comments? And turning to the public, anyone from the public wish to make comment on this item? Seeing none, bringing it back to the board. So I think the staff report does a great job of explaining, the essence of this name change. I know sometimes change is hard, but the idea of acknowledging the broader scope of the committee, I think is a good idea. And then just to note that the rules and regulations are going to come back to be discussed at the committee, and then we'll come back with any suggested changes in December. Is that right?
Yeah, if any changes are going to be if the committee feels that changes need to be made, they will be brought to the board in December, hopefully. Hopefully it'll be ready by then.
Great. Great. Thanks for telling me that it didn't take 3 meetings to get to decision, but actually there was.
Yeah, we couldn't vote.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a roll call vote item. Is there anyone who wishes to put forth a motion?
I will move it. So I would move that we approve, oh, no, not that one. That we change the name of the Recreation Committee to the Park Committee.
Second.
Third.
Okay, so roll call, please.
Oops. I am noting that Director Barsanti must have gotten kicked out of the meeting or like by internet or something. She is not on at this time to vote. Director Corbett.
Aye.
Director Couch.
Yes.
Director Mayo.
Yes.
and President Burke.
Yes, thank you. And our next item is presented by our Recreation Director, Leslie Frisbee. Oh yeah, on page 135 about the Community Forest Committee. Back to you, Leslie.
So the McKinleyville Community Forest Committee met on October 14th. In attendance were General Manager Pat Kaspari, Operations Director James Henry, myself, and Recreation Coordinator Jens Anderson. Director Dennis Mayo joined via Zoom. The committee members discussed we discussed the formation of a formal committee, and part of that discussion was who would be members of such a committee and how to form a full Community Forest Committee. It was determined that the committee would likely be comprised of 11 to 15 seats. Committee members would consist of the 2 board of director members, currently Directors Mayo and Director Corbett, the general manager, the Parks and Recreation Director, the operations director, and 1 additional Parks Recreation staff member, 1 member of the McKinleyville Municipal Advisory Committee to be chosen by the MCMAC, 1 member of the Recreation Advisory Committee to be chosen by the RAC. Additional members may include a representative from Redwood Community Action Agency, technical experts such as a forester, a biologist, or natural resource professionals. The attendees outlined the planned format and immediate objectives of the committee. Tasks were assigned to existing members of the committee, and it was discussed whether members of the general public should be invited to join the committee, and if so, how many seats should be filled by members of the public, and what process should be used to solicit and select members of the public to fill these seats. The committee recommends that 1 member of the general public be asked to be a member of the Community Forest Committee, that the open position be advertised on the district's webpage and Facebook page for approximately 30 days, and interested members of the public be asked to submit statements expressing their interests and qualifications that they would bring to the position. All submitted statements would be reviewed by the Community Forest Committee, and that the committee make recommendations to the board on which member of the public to be asked to join the committee. Staff recommends that the board review the information provided, discuss, take public comment, and approve adding a seat for a member of the general public to the Community Forest Committee with the process outlined by staff.
Thank you. And if you outlined in the text here, I was just trying to count them up real quick. Outside of this general public, is it 10 members that are currently outlined?
I think maybe 10, but I think the technical experts, there might be 1 of each. So there could be up to 15. It was a little gray when we talked about it. Feel free to jump in, Pat, if I'm messing it up.
No need to. You're doing
Okay.
great.
And any input from Director Corbett? Are you looking? Yep.
Yep, I have 2 questions. One of them is having RCAA. I would feel better if that read RCAA or other appropriate organization. They're great to align with. They're very grant experienced, but that also can have future grant option limitations attached to it. And the second is having an opening for qualified local community forest managers if available. And I'm thinking mainly Mark Andre from Arcata. I don't think he'd serve, but if we could get him, he is very, very advanced and skilled on these matters, including service on the Board of Forestry besides Arcata, and developing their community forests and having a great overall image on how to make it interface with your other natural resources. So that one could just be optional if available. just so that we have some way to get someone of that quality. If they'll serve, I doubt they will, but hey.
Well,
Uh-huh.
yeah, I have a general, I'm sorry, I'm not real informed about this community forest. The community forest is going to be under McKinleyville Community Service District, is that correct? We're responsible, liable for it, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And so these are just advisory folks that will help develop it, but we will be responsible. The MCSD is responsible for it. They kind of actually own it as a government agency. Is that kind of the idea? Okay. I'm sorry. I'm not real. I didn't understand that. Thanks.
And I had one other comment, is that there be the authority to set up an Indian subcommittee if that should prove valuable. In other words, you can integrate the tribes into it, or you can have them in a subcommittee, but we are going to be doing some type of tribal input to meet grant requirements. And so we ought to have a structure that we can appoint such a Native American Advisory Committee if necessary. And then that way we're not committed to it, but we have, again, adequate authority right from the start in our governing documents.
Okay, thank you. Director Mayo?
Yeah, thanks. To the last point, that was definitely a significant part of our conversations, and a definite outreach, perhaps membership, definite consideration, more than consideration, a definite involvement. And I wanted to just mention that I'm not sure Mark would have time or to do what the position type thing that you had brought up, John, but Mark has been very supportive of this, and in fact wrote letters of recommendation for us at least twice, and maybe more. So I think his expertise is really great to have in the process. So and as far as the structure, an advisory committee would be much like our Park and Recreation Committee is, but also in the beginning stages, it's nice rounding out of the community to help develop the wants and needs and druthers, if you will. So that's it.
Thank you. I'm going to turn to, or any other questions at the board level?
I just have one to Leslie. Do you think you have adequate authority to set up a Native American Advisory Subcommittee?
I think that we can create that. I think that we are right now it's an ad hoc committee, right? With the board of directors, and then staff are participating to build an advisory committee. And then I think once we define who will be at the table, we can flesh out like what the scope and responsibility and authorities of the committee will be. But then we'll go into the MCSD rules and regulations. Right now, there's nothing in the rules and regs for this committee.
I'm
so
not suggesting we set up any of this without a lot of thought and time. I just want to have that you feel you have the authority to do that. And then the other question I have is, do you feel uncomfortable with RCAA being given a guaranteed seat on the advisory committee?
I really appreciated your comment of or other appropriate organization. RCAA came up, I think, because they were part of the Trust for Public Lands grant and the meetings that we've had so far. So they were just like the first that came to mind. the list I presented to you is really born out of our brainstorming at that first meeting, and it is by no means comprehensive or set in stone. So yeah, I don't necessarily think it needs to be Redwood Community Action Agency.
Director Mayo?
Director Corbett, in general, this is informational to let the other board members know, but we have a committee and a committee. You're a member of that committee. You missed our last meeting. Don't miss the next. Don't miss the next one.
You won't let me forget it either.
Don't miss the next one, because many of your questions were discussed and somewhat put on a line. If you'd have been anyway, and these things need to be discussed in our committee, and there's nothing set in stone with this.
Okay, that's all I need. Nothing set in stone.
Yeah, this is really just a request on the board approving whether or not we want to invite a member of the general public within the community services district, as opposed to staff and field experts, or in addition to.
And just for what it's worth, I'm only 20%, but my view on that is definitely.
Did I already turn to the public? I think I did. Anyway, looking again, I don't see any hands over there. So, so my comments related to items that we've talked about is, I would insert after the RAC and before additional members, like I would give tribal representatives its own sentence, even just to say, the committee will include tribal representation. And I think that's worth a good dialogue with the tribes and also internally to figure out, what the best fit is. But I would start by, that being a pointed outreach item. Yes, Director Mayo.
Yeah, that's, like I said, that's definitely part of that discussion at our committee meeting. And there's some designations for contact and outreach already in the process. And so it is 100% a definite, but at this point in time, there's nothing set in stone, nor should there be. Let's let this develop organically, if you will. But you're right on point though, Director Burke. And so anyway.
Thank you. And then one other thing to consider is whether you want to invite a member and then an alternate, like from the Micmac, in case you don't get your participation from the primary. But I think this looks good. I do agree, on a member of the public. So I'm looking for a motion now to take our conversation into a motion. Who wants to try that?
Well, I'll try a motion to the extent I understand it. We're not adopting the list. We're just approving that a member of the public be invited to the committee. I believe that's a wise decision.
And that's correct. And I'll second that motion.
And staff also gets a great deal of, staff in the committee get a great deal of comments to use as well.
Super helpful.
Yeah. On to roll call.
Director Barsanti,
Yes.
Director Corbett,
Yes.
Director Couch,
Yes.
Director Mayo,
Yes.
President Burke.
Yes, thank you. All right, thanks, Leslie. All right, we are into item E9, page 139. And this is about the CalPERS. Came to us, as I understand it, through Director Corbett. And it's Pat Kaspari, our general manager, and Sean Corbett presenting.
Right, and I'll jump in here very briefly and then turn it over to Director Corbett. But as included in your board packet is a recent article, yet again detailing CalPERS and how they are not getting the return on their money that they need. And this is something that the district has been working on, and we'll likely hear also from our finance director, Colleen Trask, to talk about what the district has been doing. But we have been working on it. It is an ongoing problem, however, that Director Corbett just flagged again. And actually with that, I think I will just turn it over to Director Corbett.
Well, the very first thing is I want to make sure that the information is verified. I have a little rule the last 60 days before an election, don't believe anything, but you ought to respond to it. And actually, this would be ideal for a foreign power to sow discontent. So I'm thinking of going to the audit committee and management and asking that we write a letter to CalPERS and ask them for a response, and also that they forward to us the copies of the various reports that are mentioned in the article, so that we have something to evaluate with and how serious it is. But it just struck me when you had, it's not lower returns, it's lower returns for decades. And they are still arguing over whether they're going to get a 7.2 or 7% return, and they got several decades at 5.5. That's devastating. I mean, I don't know how much more costs we're going to have to make up for that. So first thing, problem assessment. Is it real? If it's real, how serious is it? That's where I'm coming from. After that, we'll come back to how it affects the board and our staff.
Thank you. So Colleen, would you like to weigh in now?
Only at this point to make a comment that at one point, and not that many years ago, only like a couple of years ago, CalPERS actually lowered its rate of return, or its discount rate, and they were talking about lowering it again. That was, and I heard that directly from CalPERS at a conference. They had the representatives at a conference and they were discussing this. I don't, and as far as I know, they moved forward on it twice, and I don't think they've moved forward on it again. But as you say, the problem has been going on for decades, but a lot of that was, they were called out on it. They made some very significant adjustments to, first of all, to their actuarial practices. They moved those into alignment with what's considered best practice nationwide. And they were adjusting that discount rate, but they seem to have stopped doing that. I haven't gotten notifications about that recently. I think a letter to CalPERS is a perfectly good idea, and I'm certainly entirely willing to write it, or to, if you want to have it address very specific concerns, feel free to, and I'll make sure that it goes there. But yeah, I also know that they've changed, one of the other things they did was they changed their practice to, instead of trying to fold in their unfunded accrued liability into the rate structure, they actually started separating it out. And we've been seeing those as single amount invoices on an annual basis. Which is also an improvement, because it gives you a very clear thing, and that way it keeps the rates from jumping up and down erratically. They've changed, the other thing they changed was the amortization of that liability. They shortened the timeline on that. But yeah, I absolutely think, you know, we can certainly write a letter, certainly express concerns, and see what they have to say. They were quite a bit better about transparency and about they're a lot more forthcoming about their process and methods now than they have been in decades past.
Well, I think that's a great approach. Just for the board's background, we were a leader and almost had the rafters torn down through the water agencies, because when first asked, not so much comment. Next year, a little bit of comment. Third year, Westland said, this man needs an answer, and it's gone on 3 years. The guy leaves the room to go get an answer, comes back with an ash white face and said, I can't answer it, it's all relative. And so we do have the power through the water districts to raise these issues because everyone's in the same PERS. But I think we really got to get good information, and it is slippery because they make positive changes and they are doing better than they were. But what this shows is they're having trouble meeting the basic trust responsibilities to gather enough money to pay your retirement. And so maybe it's true, maybe it isn't. I just think reasonable person would inquire, and I'd love for Colleen to write the letter, and I can probably give her 2 sentences I care about, and the rest, I'm sure she's more thorough and better than I am.
Director Mayo?
Yeah, I think it's important to find out why it's reverted back to this level. 3 years ago, 2 years, and 2 years ago, going back almost to 3, when the new executive took over, things started rebounding, and I know they had and my number is going to be off, but at least $1 billion in growth, and it might have been closer to 2 billion in growth. So I'd really like to know why that has turned around, and that shouldn't turn around because their investments in the stock market were very conservative and bringing back a good return. So I'm really surprised that we're, so.
Right. I mean, there was a great Trump bump in the stock market. And so I'm very shocked that,
that's
why didn't it get banked?
Well, we in fact may have, and as Colleen, our finance director, stated, they may be taking those profits and trying to push them somewhere else to do something that is more beneficial to some kind of bookkeeping than in fact.
Well, the things that
concern benefits.
The things that concern me is they said they're being lobbied by the cities and counties to keep dumping their money in ever riskier investments in order to bank up the return rather than charge the price. And that's a good way to double down your problems. And it shows that those constituencies are remaking the same error they did before, where they want to balance their budget, so they don't want to pay the cost, and they lobby PERS. PERS never should have gotten in this mess, but they need as much help as they can to be strong if that's the problem. And then, like I said, the discount rate, for example, well, the net present value rate was at 7% for cash. That's an absurd number. I mean, go invest in a government bond, it's going to be around, or inflation's 2-3% worst case. So anyway, the article is very disturbing. We don't know whether it's true. We'll dig to the bottom of it. We got a great staff. We got a great audit committee, and we'll go to work to try and make sure the district and our employees are protected.
Yeah. Well, thanks for bringing it up. And you could forward this stuff to our GM, as you know, when you see these things, that he could dispense it. I know the GM gets stuff from me on legislative issues.
Oh, that's where he gets all these weird ideas, huh?
Yeah. Right. Hey, it's gonna get, it appears to me the ideas are gonna get even weirder.
Oh, okay.
Oh, Lordy. Anyway, thanks, John, for that. And Colleen, thank you. It's very disconcerting, and, you know, we're just little potatoes or you know, small, but I look at this a lot like, how our district has kept up our infrastructure. You know, we've kept we've kept our infrastructure up there for our maintenance costs, our breakdowns, our infiltrations, all that stuff that costs you a lot of money, are not significant to us because we have a really great plan for doing that. And some other districts that we know of haven't done that. And then they have these crises that come up because they haven't done their maintenance. So I look at it very much like that, nuts and bolts. And I have to look at it like that because, as you all know, and I say frequently, you can put any damn thing down on these spreadsheets and tell me what it is, and I'd have to believe you.
I'll
So,
remember that, Dennis.
you know, Christ, I don't know how you guys do it. So anyway.
Okay, so that was, we are looking for a motion and a roll call on this. item.
Director Couch has a question.
Oh,
Well, not so much a question, but I wanted to share. This article is really nothing new with CalPERS. Back in 2002, I ran into one of my kind of a friend of a friend from college who was a New York financial guy, and he worked for Robert Reich. He was his chief of staff, and then he was hired to be the financial manager for CalPERS, and he did that for a couple of years till he died of cancer. But anyway, one of the things, they don't talk about it in the article here, but you know, back then, I think the value of PERS was not 410 billion, it was like 380 billion, and then the net liability was around 500 billion. So that sounds really scary, you know, when you go, God, there's this $100 billion, you know, liability out there. But one of the things he said was, well, you got to remember in business models that you have a capital to debt ratio. And so for CalPERS to have that capital to debt ratio is, while it sounds really terrible and scary, it's not that unusual a scenario. And he got brought into CalPERS because they had heavily invested in the real estate market and companies that were involved in the real estate market. And then there was this huge crash and they lost 40 or $50 billion. And so
Bad day at the office.
he was brought in to kind of restore, you know, their direction. And he had things like, there was people back then wanted to invest only in socially responsible, you know, there's a socially responsible investment technique. And he goes, well, we could do that, but then you only make 3 or 4%. And so he got them to not do that, which I was going to go, well, you know, as a CalPERS member, I appreciate that. So anyway, I just wanted to give a little background that I had some, you know, personal connection and of what was going on way back then. It sounds like it's in pretty much the same thing now. So that's just kind of the normal for CalPERS.
thank you. Did we are moving towards a motion, right? We didn't get one yet. Okay. So.
Okay, well, I'll move the staff recommendation that we provide direction to staff and the audit committee to take some, all, or additional actions as outlined in the memo.
And I'll second it.
Great. And that's clear enough for staff? Great. Okay, roll call, please.
Director Barsanti,
Yes.
Director Corbett,
Yes.
Director Couch,
Yes.
Director Mayo,
Yes.
and President Burke.
Yes, thank you. And thanks again for bringing it back and keeping it in front of the board. I know PERS has come up multiple times since I've been on the board. Really appreciate all your history and experience with it to keep it in the front of us. All right. So we just finished our E items and are moving into our F items, active committee reports, starting with Recreation Advisory Committee. Couch?
Well, I missed the last meeting, so I don't have a report. Leslie had an excellent report from the meeting, so that's all for that.
Okay. Area Fund meets once a year, didn't meet, right? REDAC, Director Mayo?
Yeah, many of you might know that the air service is picking up a little bit, and that we are going to have it might have already started. I apologize, I don't have my dates. We're going to be a flight going to Denver and dropping one flight from LA, and then the numbers are starting to pick up a little bit, so it's kind of positive to get this Denver route back. It's limited, but it's nice to get it back, and so that's basically it.
Thank you. Senior Center?
Did not meet.
Okay. Audit Committee, we've heard from. Anything else?
Nothing to report.
Employee negotiations
We have not met.
and the MICMAC. And our general manager put together a great summary email. There were multiple opportunities for the public to weigh in on transit studies and unmet transit needs. And there's a schedule outlined in that email for MICMAC meetings coming up around the town center concepts and gathering public input and looking at policies, wetland policies. They were going to change that date of December 12th because that's the December board meeting, our board meeting, and they value our participation. So that was nice that they're going to change that. And there was a discussion on the Latent Powers Committee, and we will get to talking about the Latent Powers Committee at the end of these reports. Anything more to add, Pat?
No, I think you did a good summary.
Any questions? Okay, on to Humboldt Local Area Formation Commission, Couch.
Well, the Humboldt LAFCO didn't meet. Been pretty busy with Cal LAFCO because we normally have our annual meeting, which didn't happen this year. So we had to do all our elections and things electronically. So we took care of all that for Cal LAFCO, and we're good for another year with that.
Great, thank you. Believe it's Environmental Matters Committee, and I don't think there's any items that are being met there. That's kind of as needed basis. Did not meet. So we heard on the Community Forest Committee. I assume there's nothing else to report there. So then we're going to hear from our Latent Powers Committee.
Well, we have David Couch is working on reclamation, and Greg Orsini is working on possible contract language as an approach to the homeless. I'm working with the McMack and Patrick's working with everybody way too much. I did meet with the McMack and they made some things very clear. They are not interested in becoming a planning commission, although they want to do land use planning for the town center, but that's it. So I thought that's a major decision. I think it's going to be very important, but I can't even tell you how at this point. And they appointed Maya as a liaison to us. And I have to go back to the committee to get proper authority to talk to her about it. But they were enthusiastic about that. Regarding the, it has to be made clear there have been no promises of any kind made. And furthermore, no water or sewer funds can be expended on anything on a developing relationship with the McMack. That's just out, they're restricted funds. And so I think we got a pretty good response. My biggest impression is we have thought about these things a lot more than they have. And so it's going to take some time for them to digest it. I admit I had wanted to get as much done as I could before I leave the board. I'm going to keep to that, but we're dealing with human beings and it's going to take a while after I leave for some of the latent powers to be defined, but at least we got an approach. The other thing I want to say is the library looks like it's in pretty good shape, and the police, it looks like we're having trouble finding adequate records. And so we're looking right now on whether we may need to have a board resolution and what should the wording of that resolution be for the police. And then the rest, the community forest, a little bit, this board knows as much as anybody else just because it hasn't happened yet. But I think there is sentiment that we have clear authority for ongoing operations, which really means logging, which is part of the grant. And so that has to be a clear authority, that you're doing it to make money. And then the other thing is we're looking at getting approval for additional transfers of land. That would take it, however, out of the district boundary. There are problems with that Arcata's encountered, and we're taking a look at those. And the second thing is whether we want to have the option of a scattered site community forest in case we have other large landowners that want to donate. Most of those probably won't matter for 10, 20, 30 years, but if we're going through and trying to get our authority, we want to be very clear, specify what it is and how we can go about it. So that's where that's sitting. And the homeless was generally thought to be outside of the latent powers, although certain arguments could be made to put it in. My guess is Greg Orsini and going with the contract approach means we don't have to go there. And I'm just not sure we could spend a lot of time on latent powers for the homeless, or we can find out a contract basis with our own property. And also that may or may not suggest an election if we were to go that route. So I think it's going the contract way. And the rest of it's a lot of fun. We hope we can get you some real product by December.
Can you expand a little bit on the contract basis? Does that mean, what we've been saying is like, if there were an entity that brought funding, expertise and whatnot, we could enter contract to bring district, to rent district property.
Well, fundamental latent power of the district, it's not a latent power, it's actual power, is to lease our land and lease our facilities anytime we want and sort of under different circumstances. Much as could be argued for the police, although the problem is we're deliberately subsidizing the service, and we need to be a little bit more upfront and very clear what we're doing and why we're doing it, what's our authority to do it. But it's taking the fact that we can use our leasing authority to solve problems for third parties to run it, not us. on our land if we can find an appropriate spot that's acceptable to the vast majority of citizens. And they, Arcata had a project. Most of the times they blow up like everybody else's project, but they had a project this year that worked pretty well. And so that's being looked at as a model, and it would go to the community groups to come to us. I don't think we're looking to put money into it, but we want to, again, clarify our authority. How far are we going? How are we going to handle it? What is our authority, and so on. So that's kept it alive, kept it very practical, and at the same time did not commit to providing the service because there are serious questions about our authority.
Thank you. Any other Latent Powers Committee members wish to speak with the board on any matters? That includes you, Greg, out there in the attendees list.
Yeah, I just want to back up what John said. He laid it out perfectly.
I do see Greg Orsini's hand, and I think you are able to, no, it looks like you're muted.
Yeah, I'm, so anyway, yeah, I think that,
You're muted again.
yeah, I think that, am I muted or can you hear me?
We got you now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I think that John did a good job of characterizing what we covered during the meeting, and we have another meeting on Friday, I believe.
Yes.
Great. Great to get a report. And any questions, comments? We are moving on to item F2, legislative and regulatory reports. Anything to report on here?
Nothing much going on in the political world.
Yeah. Same old, same
You know,
old.
all those lawsuits, Dennis, there isn't time for.
Crap.
Okay, then moving on to F3, we'll go to Support Services Department with Colleen Trask.
There we go. That's slightly better. The only thing I wanted to highlight in the report is that the California State Controller has made a change to the government compensation report that's required for each governmental entity in California. These reports provide information on every position with the entity and on the total compensation, including things like health insurance and retirement benefits that are paid to each position in a given calendar year. Those are posted on the California State Controller's website. They're also posted with some additional information on watchdog sites like Transparent California. While the directors on a board have always been listed on the report, the compensation, if it's done as this board is with a 1099, has not been required to be listed. However, that's going to change starting with the calendar year 2020. So whatever we report to you just for the board stipend, this is just what's reported on 1099. It has nothing to do with travel reimbursements or those kinds of expenses, but the meeting stipends will be reported on that report now. And that was just a kind of a random thing, and I wanted to let you guys know. Other than that, I have nothing further to add unless you have questions.
Well, I wanted to ask about the non-payment, and we're starting to see higher total balances and accumulate. And what are the likely outcomes here? What happens?
Well, what happens with that is 100% dependent on what the governor does. The longer he keeps these moratoriums, and I know this is also affecting a lot of landlords, because you can't evict right now also for non-payment. So it's not just water districts, it's not just utilities, it's a lot of the pain is spread around. And if he rescinds the order, we can put the people who aren't paying on a payment plan. We absolutely do that. If he doesn't, we'll end up, and the fact of the matter is some of them are working the system, and some of them are likely to abandon their debt. And that's just the reality that we're facing. I don't think it's going to be a materially significant amount in terms of, I don't think it's going to be big enough to actually shift any of the budget lines to a significant degree, but it will definitely be larger than it has been in the past. Most of the folks who are facing these situations are trying to make payments. They're trying to keep ahead of it. But yeah, we are. So yes, we are going to be facing a greater bad debt. No, it's not going to be catastrophic for anyone except the debtors, and that's going to go on their credit report, and we'll do our standard collections practices as best we can. But yeah, it all depends. 100% depends on when the governor rescinds that order. Sorry, the news isn't better.
Thank you. It is what it is. Okay, on to Operations Department. James Henry, welcome back. James.
Well, nothing to add at this time, but thank you.
All right, any questions for James? Come on, anybody out there? Okay, on to Parks and Rec Department. Leslie, welcome back.
Hello, I do not have anything further to add, but if you have questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I have one question. I did see that that the Quimby funds were getting tapped into for the activity center lobby. I know we don't do that very often, but
no. So last year I applied to Coast Central for a community grant to replace the carpet in the lobby. And I didn't get the full amount from that. Well, I didn't get it from Coast Central, but they send those applications to Humboldt Area Foundation, and one of the foundations within Humboldt Area Foundation granted us $10,000 for the project. Still not the whole amount, and so we're making up the difference using Quimby funds.
Great.
And what was the foundation that funded us?
I cannot remember off the top of my head. It was like a personal foundation. I can get that information to you. It was
okay. Thank you. We got to make sure we thank them. We got to make sure we thank them.
Yeah, no, I did. I sent them a letter, and I know it when we got the funding last year. It's in my board report from when it happened, and I just can't remember their name right now.
Okay.
And then also, I just wanted to note, it pops up in our general manager's report, that this is a challenging time, and, staff, you're doing what you can to be there for each other. I did notice that you've been doing a series of communication skills workshops for all district staff, and I wondered if there was anything you wanted to share with the board about those.
Other than that, I really like doing it, and it seems to be something that the folks who opted to do it, I think all but 6 employees opted to participate. we're doing small groups and they're interdepartmentally mixed. And so staff who don't usually get to work together are getting to know each other. I feel like it's been really, really good for folks. The feedback has been positive. They might just be nice. I don't know, but yeah, I really like it. And I think it's some of the feedback has been it's nice to have a place to talk about things, especially, and like sort of decompress from the stressors that are happening around us. So
Yeah.
I'm grateful that I get to do it.
Yeah, you're getting to facilitate those sessions.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm just, to highlight the amount of time you've spent in professional development in this way. And it's just such an asset to the district, especially coming to bear right now when the need is very high. So thank you for bringing your skills and putting this together for the staff.
Thanks.
Anything else for Leslie? Okay, thanks, Leslie. Oh, I did notice that there's going to be another opening on the RAC. It looks like David Coelho resigned.
There's actually 2 openings. Josh Zender, he had to move out of the area, and David did resign. There was an article in the last newsletter. I've received 3 emails about it. I haven't received any official interest letters, but I'm waiting to hear back from folks. So.
Great. Okay, thanks. Sorry to bring you back.
No problem.
Okay, and then our general manager.
Yeah, and I just want to start with echoing how appreciative we are of all the work Leslie's done to develop those workshops, and they really are going over well. And a lot of staff weren't quite sure what they were getting into going into those, but everyone has been very much enjoying them, and they have been really great. So thank her for developing those and putting those on. I just wanted to highlight a couple of things in my general manager's report. We have done our first COVID submittal to FEMA for $41,000 to try to recoup some of the COVID costs. We also did another $19,000 submittal to Humboldt County through their CARES Act funding for the computers that we got to allow staff to work remotely. I also wanted to highlight that I have met again with True North. They set up a meeting to discuss the homeless issue again. And it is kind of back to where we were talking last year of potentials of using district land to set up tenting camps for homeless this winter. And I briefed them on our Latent Powers Committee and that we were looking at all of that stuff right now, and told them that I would get back to them once the Latent Powers Committee had kind of developed policies or come up with guidance on that. So that information will be forthcoming. So other than that, I have nothing else to add.
Any questions for Pat? All right, thank you. Then President's report. I don't have anything to report except it's nice to see the local election results coming in, and I don't know when those get finalized, but it looks like that district is going to be in good hands with new directors coming on board. And I just want to open the mic up. I don't know, we don't have our supervisor didn't stay with us for the full call tonight, but I generally like to just see if he's got any items. But I don't think that's him at the 920 number. Okay, so then board member comments, announcements, reports, and agenda item requests. None? All right, then. Great job, everyone. Thanks. Thanks for the teamwork. Thanks for being here. Take care of yourselves. Get some good rest.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow, April.
Thanks, April. Thanks, Colleen.
And close the meeting.
Good job, Joey.
Thanks, Joey.
Yes, thank you, Joey.
Thanks.